always been asked, what is my favorite car? I've always said, the next one. Carol, Shelby. I'm Blakely Thomas-Aguilar, and this is Pop Culture Tech, an original podcast brought to you by VMware. A very practical invention is also one of the longest-running pop culture icons in history, the automobile. Cars were created to get us from point A to point B in a much more practical, efficient way. But what Henry Ford sparked with the Model T has transformed into something so much more epic. It's fashion on wheels. It's art in motion. It's the way we express our individualism and our place in a community. And thanks to the Transformers and Knight Rider, cars can even be celebrities and heroes. To kick off season 2 of our podcast, I am thrilled to have the opportunity to explore how we're blending our passion for cars with our passion for technology. We'll highlight the amazing digital innovations powering everything from infotainment systems to autonomous vehicles. But first, we're going to start at the beginning of the consumer journey, the technology innovation transforming the way we shop for and buy our cars. I couldn't think of anyone better to help us learn about these innovative shopping experiences than Sophie Seiwald, Managing Director of MercedesBenzio.
Like around about 6 or 7 years ago, no one was really talking about digital and what does it mean, and start from the customer and work backwards. And we started to learn what digitization actually means. And we also started hiring tech talent for the company. And it was for us quite a big change to go away, let's say, from the classic profiles you would be hiring for IT or business to really digital and tech profiles. Somehow that worked out quite well. We built up a pretty nice and decent hub in Singapore over the course of 3 or 3.5 years. And then in the end of 2017, I got this great opportunity to join Mercedes-Benzio. Back then, we were only 50 employees or 70 employees, and the target to grow to 400. And this is what happened over the last 3 years now. We've been growing this amazing tribe called Mercedes-Benzio.
Mercedes-Benzio has this powerful mission statement. IO stands for input-output. We translate input from our customers into outputs of digital experiences. That's not our job, it's our passion. One of the most powerful examples of delivering these input-output experiences is the car configurator. Mercedes-Benz's website submerges you in its world-renowned brand luxury. 360-degree views deliver an immersive experience right to your laptop or smartphone. And with a wide array of customizable options, you really can build the car of your dreams. And through its global partners, have it delivered right to your home.
So the car configurator is one of our most visited, sections on the website. But ultimately, lots of people come to our site, and we call it a little bit the dreamer journey. So people start configuring the car and see, how would the G-Wagon look like? How would that AMG look like? So it's a way to explore the cars that we have, right? So one thing is the front end, what you see, but the other thing is the complexity in the back end. And I say we're talking about years and years of engineering, documentation, and work that lies behind the configurator. So we definitely, from a technical point of view, let's now talk first technology, had a lot of riddles to solve and problems to solve. But what we also, and that's the most amazing thing, I think, by combining this talent out of business, out of the vehicle product world, but also out of technology, we were able to, by experimenting, be it with A/B tests, with different prototypes, with different tests on how consumers will react, we were able to extremely simplify this whole car configurator experience, the success story is on our side. So we've increased our conversion rate dramatically, but also we've received lots of positive feedback, and people, suddenly also understand our products better. They're being better guided through the whole process, and ultimately, people, enjoy. This is what I always love most. People enjoy configuring a car and don't get confused or frustrated doing it, right? Our role model market would be China. In China, it's a kind of a normal thing to do, but they also exactly know what they're buying, because they've been seeing 1,000 S-classes and G-wagons on the street and say, I want to have exactly their car. So basically, as simple as it sounds, you basically can configure a car, and it will give you a list of cars which are close to your dream configuration, giving you a nice price, and you can essentially, most of the people would reserve the car and then get it delivered and then do the final transaction, for example, for a leasing contract and stuff like this at the dealership. But within China, the whole journey is completely digitized. It's possible, and people are doing it. I say that was also one of my hypotheses. Is it, will we be able to sell the whole portfolio? Now I'm talking really about car sales. Will we, sell the whole portfolio online, or it's like S-Class and G-Wagon? Now, just as an example, too big and too valuable to just sell it online, but it somehow seems to be working out. If the car description, what you're buying, is clear, the price is clear, and you think you make a good deal, then everything seems to be possible. So yeah, it's happening.
To deliver digital experiences like the car configurator, there's a massive amount of data collected across the entire journey, from the people building the cars to the people buying the cars and the people servicing the cars. And some seriously hard work needs to be done by some really big brains to transform all that data into actionable insights.
Everyone talks about data, and everyone says, data is the new oil. We all need to have data. So back then, a couple of years ago, actually, when I started, what we figured out is, when I asked the engineers, so can you tell me, can you give me some insights on your specific product or on your specific feature? Most of them would say, well, difficult, because I need to ask somebody else to get the data to me. So let's start with the data journey. What we started to do was, we had, let's say, a democratization of data in our organization. That means that we have data analysts that are actively working together with the engineers to design and also implement a certain data points in order to collect the data that we actually need. So it's not just about random data, and it's just that anyone can, deal with the data. We really wanted to make sure that how we design our applications and how we deal with data, it actually churns out the data that we need. So that's the first step. And then basically you start pooling this data. But if you don't do anything with that, that's also useless, right? So to create the right stories and to create the right insights requires quite a long journey. So when we talk about the data journey, we are still working on that. Right? You cannot just hire a bunch of data engineers or data scientists, even worse, right? And say, okay, guys, now you're going to run some beautiful data use cases on our website, and let's do some great algorithms. It would be complete mess, right? So a data journey for me is really a journey. And it takes ages, and a lot of manpower and a lot of goodwill to turn all of your touch points the way so it actually provides meaningful data you can read out of it. And also with the car configurator, only as an example, and we have many more of those examples, it's not done from one day to the other or by hiring a couple of folks who can do it. So if you're taking data journey seriously, you should really talk about approach.
Innovative technology experiences require passion, long-term strategy, and diligent fanaticism to transform ideas into success stories.
I'm really extremely grateful that we are able to talk about, the success stories also from Mercedes-Benzo, to building software and actually, having the people in place and on the go who are passionate about Mercedes-Benz and passionate about technology. This is a rare opportunity, and I'm super grateful that also Mercedes has done this decision to go that way and sees this basically as a also role model about how we can do things, and that technology is actually changing the way of everything that we do, and it will become more and more important to make sure we understand the technology and not give it up to a third party. I know many of my partners don't want to hear that, right? But ultimately, I know if technology is the core of your business, if you want to make it the core of your business, then you need to get your hands on it, you need to understand it, and to have, technology principles and engineering cultures and really a focus on that. I do believe that's a game changer for the future, and we should be doing much more of that. And I can only warmly recommend it to anyone who is not yet sure if that's such a good idea. If I really need some software engineers, do I really need those people? Yes, you need them.
Now that we've covered the buying experience, let's talk about the digital innovations inside the cars. I asked Sanjay Vishin, an expert in digital automotive platforms, to shine a little light on how far car technology has come and where it's going next.
If you look at the trajectory of smartphones, right, the phones were kind of isolated beings before. And then at some point, when they start getting connected to the cloud, like the iPhone did, that's when they started becoming more interesting 20 years back. So now what the car looks like inside, if you break open a car, what happens, you see these ECUs, 3 big ECUs or boxes, let me call it boxes for now, connected to each other over some wiring and cables and stuff like that. And then there are large teams which build these ECUs. There are about 70 ECUs in a car today, and that is controlling the stuff. Like there are small ECUs, there are big ECUs. The small ECUs tend to be things which control your automatic braking systems. When you apply brake very sharply, then it'll back off for a little while. So those little things are done also by small ECUs. And then you have these 3 big ECUs. One is connecting to the cloud, called the telematics unit, typically, the infotainment system, which is driving all your speakers and displays and the phone and connectivity navigation. So that's an infotainment ECU. And then there is the autonomous ECUs, which are assisting you if you're lucky enough to have a Tesla autopilot that's assisting you while you're hands-free. So what does it take to build one of these? So I think that this is where the people have called the car the computer on wheels happens. It's because of these, mainly because of these 2 ECUs. One is the infotainment ECU, and the other one is the autonomous driving ECUs. The compute requirements in these 2 ECUs is so high now that you can think of them as being 2 little PCs from your desktop, sitting inside these 2 ECUs. And then that leads to the amount of software which is now entering the car is because of these 2 ECUs having so much of compute needs that they need to be programmable. So they start looking like desktops inside a car now. And that's why, hence the term computer on wheels.
Speaking of a computer on wheels, let's talk about one of my personal favorite digital innovations, the infotainment system.
You could break it down into, so there are 3 or 4 big features of infotainment, what we call infotainment features. One is phone connectivity. So like typically in a car, it's very sensitive to safety. So you have to have a particular form of hands-free phone connectivity. That's one part of infotainment. Then there is the regular audio and video entertainment. Video can be playback video. In the olden days, it used to be the CD player playing back video and movies. And now it's mostly streaming services coming over the cloud. Same thing for audio also. You need kind of, at least at the high end, you have fairly sophisticated immersive audio with in an Audi, and some of the high-end Audis have about 50 speakers in them. So those would be entertainment related stuff, the audio and video piece. Then there's navigation. We talked about navigation. That's always very important in a car, because that's the purpose of a car. And then finally, I think what's changing with more sophisticated infotainment is the way we interact with the car. So the user interface, and that's very interesting, because the modalities of how you interact with the car is already changing, and will change in the future even more. So things like touch, gestures, speech, Alexa, you can use Alexa or Google or Apple for that matter. So all these are kind of pieces of infotainment, the major pieces of infotainment. They're also little stuff.
Today's digital car experiences are incredible, but there's so much more to come. From autonomous vehicles connected into smart cities, cloud, 5G, and machine learning are leading us into the digital future.
5G millimeter wave is a big thing, and just to explain it to maybe people who aren't that familiar with it, so 5G is especially millimeter wave is where you get a lot of bandwidth, a lot of spectrum. And because of that, you can have, so like today, the peak rates into a car are roughly 1 to 2 gigabit per second. So that's the bandwidth you can get into a car at 4G, LTE. And 5G, if you enable it with this millimeter wave, then you can get from 1 to 2 gigabits all the way up to, 10 gigabits. So you get about 10x the speed for your connectivity. So that's one exciting thing. The other thing is, as today, you can only connect to the cloud. So your car connects to a cloud, and then you go on. We're also working on things where you connect from car as well. So you're connecting to an adjoining car, assuming that car can also talk. Of course, if it's an old Honda or whatever, it needs to have that modem. If it has, then you would like to talk to the car. Why would you like to talk to another car on the road? For a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is that for safety, because it's kind of a beacon saying I'm here, and it can tell you its GPS location. So with that, you can figure out that I have a car or a potential standing car in the middle of a highway, things like that. So that's what we're working on, is car to cloud with higher bandwidth. Once you enable this kind of bandwidth, like 10 gigabits per second into a car, then you can come up with even more interesting applications. So for example, smart city guys are interested now because they're saying that all our intersections will now provide assist to the cars. So for example, these smart intersections in smart cities.
To help make this Jetsons-like future a reality, technologists are taking huge leaps forward using AI and machine learning.
Machine learning has pervaded both autonomous driving ECUs as well as infotainment ECUs, and in general, the whole car systems. The biggest impact is obviously on the autonomous driving systems or the ECUs. Most of the machine learning workloads are for perception. We use them for perception. So a car has, when you're assisting a driver, you can have from 7 to 13 cameras. You have about 6 or 7 radars facing outside, and then you have possibly a LiDAR. You see that on some of the Waymo cars in the Bay Area. So all these things are needed for perception of the environment. So these things these sensors bring this data into the car, this ECU, and that's where most of the algorithms are based on machine learning. And once these machine learning algorithms run on these sensor data, then they generate a certain view of the car, of the environment around the car. Once they've done that, then they also have to locate the vehicle within that map, and for that they use our good old GPS.
Everything in life is somewhere else, and you get there in a car, EV white. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this episode on cars getting smarter. Special thanks to Sophie Seiwald and Sanjay Vishin for joining our show and sharing their incredible insights. I'm Blakely Thomas-Aguilar, and this is Pop Culture Tech. Our podcast is brought to you by VMware, the software that powers the world's complex digital infrastructure. Learn more at vmware.com. Have questions about today's episode or just want to talk about your favorite car innovations? Follow me at Blakely Ags and use hashtag PopCultureTech. Until next time.